Hey guys, my name is Steven and today I'm going to show you some really basic bread and butter file tasks that you can use with Python, such as looping through files, renaming files, and moving files to a different location. Python is really becoming one of my favorite tools for automating data processes. I used to use SSIS almost exclusively, but now I really incorporate Python scripts into a lot of my projects simply because it's so easy to read and write and to loop through objects, especially compared with the complexity of SSIS. Also, the pandas library is really great. It's a really versatile tool for working with a lot of different data sources, pulling that data into a data frame, and then manipulating it on a cell by cell level. But before you do any of that stuff, you should really know how to do some basic data management tasks, looping through files, renaming files, moving files. These are all really essential if you're working with data and automation. So today our job is going to be to take all of the files in one folder. We're going to loop through these files. We're going to append the current date to the end of the file name, and then we're going to drop these files into a separate location. I'm also going to throw in an if statement to check if the file that we're going to move already exists in the drop location. So this way I can show you guys how to avoid overwriting a file if it already exists. So let's get started. Let's take a look at the libraries we're going to be using. The libraries we're going to use to interact with the file system are os and shutil. I'm going to use os for getting a list of the files in our source folder, and then we're going to use shutil for moving and renaming the files. You can honestly probably use either one of these to do all of the tasks we're going to do today, but I think it's good to have an introduction to both of these libraries. So we're also going to use pathlib to check if a file exists in our destination folder, and we're going to use datetime to go ahead and get the current date so that we can append that to the end of our file names. And I'm going to go ahead and put the pip commands for installing these libraries in the description if you need that information. So now that we have our libraries, we're going to create some variables that store the paths to our source and destination folder. So path 1 is our source folder where our files are stored, and path 2 is our destination folder where we want to drop the files. So now what I'm going to do is get a list of all the files in our source folder, because what we want to do is loop through all of these files in order to rename and move them. So I'm using the OS library here, using the list directory method, and I'm pointing it towards our source file path. So let's go ahead and see what this looks like. So you can see that we have a list of all the files in our source folder. So before we loop through these files, let's go ahead and get today's date so that we can append that to the end of our file names. So I'm using the today method to get today's date, and down here I'm just reformatting that into a nicer format so that we can append this to the end of our file name. So let's go ahead and see what this looks like. Let's go ahead and comment this out. Okay, so you can see that we have today's date, and now we're ready to loop through our files. So let's start off with a simple for loop and see what this looks like. Okay, so as you can see, we're iterating through each of our files in our source folder, but you can see that we only have the file name and we don't have the full path. So let's go ahead and get the full path for our source and our destination for each file. So all I'm doing here is adding the file path to the file name. And we have to use double backslashes here since it's an escape character. So if you want a single backslash, you have to put double backslashes in quotes. And in the destination variable, I'm also adding our formatted date here. So we're appending the date to the file name. So now we have the full file path for our source and our destination. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to check if the source file already exists in our destination. So we're going to create this variable pathcheck. We're going to set it equal to path, and we're going to put our file path destination here. And make sure you capitalize this P in path. And then we're going to use the method isFile, and this is going to return either true or false. So if this file does exist, we're going to print the file already exists. And if the file does not exist, then we can go ahead and do our final step, which is using shutil to move the file. So shutil.move method requires two parameters. We're going to use obviously our source variable here, so we have the full path to our source file, and the next parameter is where we're going to drop the file. So this is going to be our file path destination. So let's go ahead and run this in command prompt and see what happens. Actually, first, let's take a look at our folders. So remember, folder 1 has these 3 files. Folder 2 is empty. So let's go ahead and run our script. And we have an error here. Looks like there's an indentation problem. Let's go ahead and make sure these are indented correctly. And let's run this again. Okay, so that was quick. Now let's go ahead and see what happened. So as you can see, folder 1 is now empty. And in folder 2, we have our files that we moved. And as you can see, we appended the date onto the end of these files. So I hope that was helpful for you guys. This is my first YouTube video, and the goal here is really to help people learn some of the basic skills that I use every day as an ETL developer, and learn really how to work with data and automate tasks more effectively. So yeah, let me know if you guys have any questions. Please be sure to drop those in the comments. And if this video helped you, please like the video and subscribe for more Python and BI content. Thanks, guys.